Commons briefing. This time we have some of my very favorite Canadians on the line to talk about the work that's being done by a group of volunteer data scientists in Ontario around COVID and driving some data transparency and some really wonderful data analytics to help drive and help fight the battle with COVID-19 up here in Canada. So I'm going to let Farbod and Guillaume introduce themselves, and we'll have live Q&A at the end. If you're streaming, if you're watching this via any of the streaming outlets, we will aggregate those questions and post them to the speakers at the end of this. So without any further ado, Farbod and Guillaume, please take it away.
Amazing. Thanks, Diane. So I'll introduce myself first. Hi, everyone. My name is Farbod Abolhassani, and I'm one of the website development leads for the HowsMyFlattening project. I'll let Guillaume introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Guillaume Moutier. I'm a senior principal technical evangelist at Red Hat in the cloud storage and data services business unit, and I'm working mostly on data science platforms and data engineering and everything that relates to data. Back to you, Farbod.
Amazing. So how we're going to do this is I'll have a quick slideshow to tell you guys about the work we've been doing. And I'm hoping that Guillaume will take over from there and have a couple more slides and then a demo of everything. Without further ado, let's talk about HowsMyFlattening. So to give you some context, I mean, we're here in Ontario, but I'm sure depending on where everyone's from, similar kind of context. This all started back in March with the whole pandemic situation on the rise. We're looking across to Europe and seeing all the issues that they were having, and back here nothing had changed. Some of the team is physicians in the hospital. We got kind of quite a big varied team that I'll talk about, but things were operating as normal, and there was this big concern looking into how things are going, like how are we actually going to get action. So let's go to the problem statement. So we knew COVID was coming, right? We could see that from the European example. And the normal state of things here in Ontario, and it may be the case in, I imagine, many kind of healthcare state of things, is that there's lots of data and it's not in one place, right? So some comes in PDFs. The government has started reporting some stats on their websites that's frozen. You get out Ontarians, get out your spreadsheets and start writing this down every day if you want to get a sense of what's happening. Any analysis that happens in healthcare tends to be, one-off analysis. Speed is a huge issue where things take weeks, if not months. And quite honestly, given what was happening in Europe, we were scared of what was going to happen here if we didn't do something about it. So what happened is we put together a team, like Diane mentioned, it's largely volunteer driven and kind of a community approach of, okay, let's see what we can do, leveraging technology to help and contribute in some way. So what we did is we actually got together. We're quite a diverse set of people, so it's a group of right now over 100 people with different backgrounds: engineers, computer scientists, we've got clinicians, we got epidemiologists, and we're all together to collect data, analyze it, and make it available to both the public and to do analysis to inform decision making, to be able to better guide the response to COVID-19. So some of the problems that we're solving from the previous slide is around real-time data viz. So having proper data pipelines, not someone just in Excel, doing proper live visualizations that are connected to a database, doing this all in a kind of agile manner that doesn't take months. Because we didn't have months back in March, and then doing this all under a scientific process where we do it in a peer-reviewed kind of way where there is experts in epidemiology, medicine, and data science who sign off on everything we do. So we're not just some guy on the internet. You can trust the analysis we produce. So let's talk about what we actually did. Part of the challenge I mentioned is the data wasn't in one place. So the first thing we did is we put it all in one place, right? So we're gathering data from lots of different sources. So both looking at Ontario-specific data, Canadian data, and then also international data. And then that data is, of course, kind of in different categories. So it covers everything from your typical case data to more interesting, more unique, I would say, around mobility, some economics data that we're adding. So the goal is have one site where researchers and others who want to do analysis have to use the data and find it. So you don't have to look over all over the internet. And it's all vetted. So it's not, we trust the data we put there. So you can trust the process there. So what came from that data is, of course, the analysis bit. So one way we present this analysis is we have 37 regional dashboards. So one is looking at all the KPIs for Ontario, and then in Ontario we have regional health authorities, which are called public health units. So we made a dashboard for each of the public health units, right? Because before, each public health unit was trying to make their own dashboard. They all looked different. And if you lived in Ontario, you had to figure out where to go. This is one resource you come and you find the data that's relevant to you. What we do on top of that, outside of just the dashboard, is kind of more deep dive analysis as well. So we have 14 plus analysis on the website. Going back to how we solve for it, these are not static images. These are actual live interactive visualizations that are rerun and connected to a database. I'll talk about kind of how it works in a bit. But that's kind of how we're different, is not doing, this is not an Excel shop. We're doing things that are, at the low to medium technical sophistication, if you will. This is just to highlight one of our analysis. This is kind of a new thing that we did that we're looking at. The point is to be able to monitor different things that are happening in the pandemic. So one thing that we recently caught is that there has been a shift in trend in the age distribution of cases, right? So this would not be possible if someone was running this analysis every day, because we have 15, 16 different things we're doing, and we're not we don't have the resources to man that. So it's all automated to the part that it can be automated. So that's kind of, and honestly, if I imagine most of the people on this call are fairly technical people. This is not a technical problem that we're solving. It's just unheard of in the space that we're doing it for some reason. So it's just kind of catching up with the industry, if you will. So I'll talk a bit about the how. We use two different kind of visualization software for our website. The analysis page is mainly in Tableau. The reason for that was, quite honestly, we had people who were Tableau people, like data viz folks, and we didn't want that burden of coding to be on the engineering team, if you will. So that part is mainly done in Tableau. How it actually works, we had to go through lots of hoops to make Tableau update live. Basically, the only way you can do it in a reasonable manner for it to also be public is to use Google Sheets. So right now what happens is our data from the database, the backend is updating Google Sheets every day at different intervals, and then Tableau is connected to that. So Tableau does a refresh from Google Sheets. There's, believe it or not, no direct way of connecting Tableau to a database of any sort or an API or anything. So Google Sheets is your way if you want to have a public thing, but it works, and that's kind of how we're operating. The other bit is Plotly. The reason for this, it's the standard language and for data science folks. It's open source, so there's no licensing cost. So that's kind of the reasoning for it, and it's quite simple and everyone knows how to use it. So our dashboarding is mainly in Plotly, whereas the analysis page, the Viz team makes in Tableau. And of course, I'll talk about the OpenShift in a second. So our architecture is now, thanks to the team over at OpenShift, has been containerized and moved over. So we have your typical standard pods running. We have different staging and production and development environments. And then, of course, we have cron jobs that run for the data pipelines that go to all the different data sources that we have and update the database, which, as I mentioned, then updates the visualizations, whether it's through Plotly, which directly interacts with the database, or through the Google Sheets workaround. The other how that I wanted to mention, again, this is thanks to the amazing engineers from Red Hat. Shout out to Olu and Steve, who made this happen. Is we moved actually our entire code base. We started in GitHub and we moved it to GitLab, and now we have GitLab runners that integrate with OpenShift. So when there's this code pushed, we have a fully connected CI/CD pipeline that builds the image on OpenShift, applies a template to build the image and figure out all the resources and do all the fun Kubernetes stuff to make sure it gets deployed. So it's quite literally, you've got a new branch, it gets deployed to a development environment, you can play around with it. You merge it into staging gets updated, all the good stuff there. So that's been quite amazing. I know Guillaume's talking more about the open data stuff, the how behind that. But it's been amazing to move to OpenShift and take advantage of all the great benefits of Kubernetes and OpenShift. I'll talk a bit about our team. I mentioned we got quite a diverse group. Again, it's largely volunteer driven. I would say this is kind of very new for me as well, in the sense that we're trying to do an open source, open community bit with a lot of folks that are not software folks. So we have a lot of clinicians, we have epi kind of researchers, a lot of MD grad students, and we're trying to kind of onboard them into this whole GitLab open source approach and teach them about, a lot of the things that are normal, I guess, in the open source community, you could say. But it's been quite amazing as well. But I mean, it comes with its challenges, right? So some of the challenges actually that we've been experiencing, Ontario has quite discordant data. So when you build all these automated data pipelines and cron jobs that update the database, things break quite often, and some things we can predict and some things we can't. So we have to kind of build up on top of it. So this is an example. You're looking at the accurate episode dates column in that the government releases, and they put like things that don't make sense, right? So there's things like 2002, like obviously no one got COVID in 2002, or it's highly unlikely. Most likely 2020, or accurate episode date of 12 a.m., right? Like stuff like that, which are really basic stuff that if we don't see it coming, it breaks things, and then our viz are not updated, and all the implications of that. So we've been kind of iterating and building in like basic conditional logic to kind of filter some of this stuff out. Again, not a technical challenge, more just a maturity challenge. We've been building the bicycle and riding it, if you will. So we're growing, and there's some growing pains for sure. I'll briefly talk about what's next. So we got two really exciting things that I'm personally excited about. One is I mentioned we have 37+ dashboards. There's a lot of data there. We're working on a scorecard that translates that data for the public, if you will. So simple kind of red light, green light, yellow light. Picking 5 key metrics we think are really, really important to focus on, and then seeing an easy kind of breakdown of it. So this is going to be our new homepage. So this is what we're actively working on. And then another bit, which Guillaume is going to go into, Open DataHub, which is going to be amazing, amazing, amazing. I know the whole team is excited about it, which is where we're going to, as we get access to more secure data that not everyone can have access to, and there's contractual obligations with it, this will be our solution, where we can figure out the access management and how we have different people access to different groups of files, and building in all our pipelines into something that is easy to use, because as I mentioned, a lot of our users are not extremely technical folks. So this kind of removes a lot of the complexity, which is we're really, really excited about, and I'm excited for them to talk more about it as well. I'll briefly talk about the response. As I mentioned, this is largely volunteer driven. We've been getting picked up in the news a few times. There's just been, some validation. For those of you who are not familiar with any of these articles, the Star is kind of the Toronto Star is a big deal here, if you will. It's our equivalent of the New York Times. So we got picked up by them, and there's been some university-specific publications. But honestly, the big thing for us has been this slide. I think this is what drives the whole community. Is on our website we have a chat bot. And through the chatbot, anyone can kind of tell us how they feel about it, about the work we're doing. There's like a 5-star rating review, and then people can submit specific feedback. And I'm just leaving it on the screen here for a couple of seconds while I'm talking. I hope you guys are able to just read through a few of them. Honestly, this has been what's driving the passion of the volunteers here, is the positive feedback that we've gotten from the public, right? In terms of making it more accessible, allowing people to know what's going on, people feeling like they need access to transparent data that may be lacking in other ways. It's just providing them with a resource, right? That's what it's all about. Almost at the end of the presentation here, the last 2 slides here are around call to action. We really need more help. So if you're on this call, if you're watching this, whether it's today or some point in the future, please go to our GitLab. The link is at the bottom of every slide here. So gitlab.com, HowsMyFlattening. But please, I'm sorry, 1 second. I just got a call. So please do go to our GitLab and get involved. And you can just find it at gitlab.com, HowsMyFlattening. We can use any help that we can get, and everyone can contribute. We have lots of different things you can contribute to. So please do get involved there. I usually have a slide for, like I mentioned, most of our group is non-technical. So this is what I usually show to show them what the hell GitLab is and what I'm talking about. But I imagine most people are familiar, but they're bored, so you can figure out what working group you'd like to get involved with. That's it for me. In summary, we're a small organization, largely volunteer-driven. Our goal is to show the value of open data and analytics, and an open community, open source approach to move quickly to generate health insights and putting them all in one place to help inform both decision makers and the public. And it's been, maybe I'll do a bit of a transition here. I think what we do and what our vision for how analytics should be done, it quite nicely aligns with Red Hat's and the company and what their mission is about. So it's been amazing being able to collaborate with some of the folks on this call, Guillaume and folks from Red Hat, Diane included. So with that, I'll hand it off to Guillaume to talk about the Open Data Hub, which is quite exciting.
Thanks a lot, Farbod. And as you all have seen, the effort that is made by this community of researchers, of data scientists, of students, and everyone that is involved in the community is really important. And that's exactly why at Red Hat and in the Canadian Red Hat community, we wanted to help. We wanted to do our share of helping this community build and grow. So what I will talk to you about now is the next step, I would say, where we can help this community with the data science platform that they want to build. Because as you've seen, as the number of people who are helping on this website, and what's more important, on the data analysis and all the stuff going around, as this team is growing, they have more needs to be able to have working environments, especially shared environments where it will be easy for them to collaborate, to exchange ideas, to exchange data or other resources. And as Farbod mentioned, they also have this need of managing different access levels because they have some more restricted data sets, of course. Some may contain personal information or sensitive information. So those are the requirements that we talked about with the team, and we discussed how we could help them get to this next level in terms of platform. So our answer to that was leveraging Open DataHub. Open DataHub, for those who don't know, is a project at Red Hat. It's not a product. It's a project that showcases very well how you can deploy data science platform on top of OpenShift. So it's a kind of a meta operator that allows you to very easily deploy some of the commonly used data science tools out there. So, JupyterHub notebooks or Kubeflow pipelines or Seldon for serving models. So this is all the stuff that we can deploy right now through Open DataHub. Of course, it's not everything that is deployed right now for HowsMyFlattening. It's mostly at the moment Jupyter notebooks and shared data workspaces. But it's, as a summary, it's about getting from there. Each data scientist having its own installation of Jupyter and the libraries that are needed and the data sets and stuff like that. So getting from this world to this one, where on top of OpenShift you are able to run JupyterHub, which will give you access to notebooks, to easy to use environments, and on top of that, shared environments with very efficient use of resources and all the management that goes with it. Okay. What I used also in this setup is SAF. It's RooksFS that is deployed in this installation, because it allows us to have different types of storage that we will be able to use in our environments. We needed block storage to create PVs for the users, so that means each user is able to have its own environment to store its own data or files. But at the same time, we needed files. We needed shared data. So as RooksFS and OCS are providing shared file storage with through HowsMyFlattening, those allows us to have RWX PVs that can be mounted inside all the pods, and we'll show you in a few minutes how it works. So that's the environment. I will close this and show you how it works. So I have created in the project, I have created different persistent volume claims for shared data with different access levels: private, public, secret. I have another one here for public notebooks. And all those PVCs are using this storage class, RooksFS, which allows us to have these no, it's not selected the right one, sorry. For example, for these shared data private PVCs, it allows us to use this read-write many access mode. So that means that several containers, several pods will be able to mount this share simultaneously. Okay. What is also interesting is that, as you see, that's the new way to deploy Open DataHub. We're using the Kubeflow definition files, and that's what is interesting is in this way, it's very easy to deploy overlays. And in this case, I have created this overlay, which I called shared PVC. And an overlay is basically saying, oh, in this specific configuration of the deployment, you will do a replace with this value. And here I have the code in a more readable highlighting. So this code basically just say, whenever you want to spawn a new pod, you will look into the user lists, private users and secret users. If there are admins, they will also have read-write access on those shared folders. And you would append some configuration where you are able to mount the persistent volume claim, for example, here the shared data public, directly inside the pod. Okay, that's the technical part. I'll do a special session on this at some point, but let us see how it works. So let's say I'm a data scientist. I'm part of the HowsMyFlattening initiative. I will have access to my environment through this launch board, and I will just launch my Jupyter environment. It will require me to sign in. Here I have some credentials that I can use. And in this example, I will launch a notebook which comes with the SciPy libraries, the Python SciPy libraries, and also comes with the R engine, because that was one of the requirements from the team to be also able to use our notebooks. So again, this is a customized version that I created, because that's quite easy to do from Open DataHub. You can create your own images. And here I can select my development size. So that means that the size of the pod I will create. I could add some more environment variables, and then I will just spawn it. It will take a few seconds, and meanwhile we can see what's happening under the curtain. And here you can see I have here Jupyter Hub notebook with my login name, and I have the container creating. Okay, and I guess it's almost running. Yes, it has pulled the image, and then I am in my environment. Here you can see there are some stuff that I created myself. I have this folder here, our demos and our packages that I installed. So let's say here I open this notebook. So that's my environment where I'm able to work. And that's the simulation I have run based on a notebook that the team provided to me. But on top of this personal environment, I would say, I have access now to a shared data folder. So this shared data folder is the same one that everyone who's using the environment will be able to see. And here, as I have those special access, I have access to private and secret folders. But normally, standard people part of the initiative will only see the public folders. And that's where the public folder, that's where they will find, some data sets that they are able directly to use with their notebooks. So that's a very neat way to provide people with shared data that they can directly use inside their environments. And we have also created a shared notebooks environment, and Farbod yesterday created this welcome notebook, okay, just to explain how it works and to give some demonstration on those shared data that are accessible by everyone. Okay, so that's about it for this presentation. It's again, it's a standard Open DataHub deployment, first base with Jupyter Hub. Maybe we will deploy other stuff in the coming weeks. But that's a very interesting implementation, especially with those shared data and shared notebooks that are very easily done with the RWX capacity that we have in RooksFS or OpenShift container storage. And that's all for me.
All right. As a Canadian, and I think both Farbod and Guillaume as well, we're all very excited about this project happening and how it's unfolded very, very rapidly. There's one question, and it gives me a good segue to how to get involved. And I'm going to share my screen for a second just so that I can put up the GitLab page here on HowsMyFlattening, and you can tell me if you can see my screen. That would be great. So the one question was that's come in from Twitch just while you all were talking was about why did we decide to use GitLab, or why did Farbod? Maybe you have some insights into this, but while we're talking about it, if you are looking here, the URL is here for HowsMyFlattening and how to get involved and how to get started in using some of the projects here. And Farbod, do you have some insights into, and I have tons, but why you decided to use GitLab and how that came about?
So when we started the project, like I mentioned, we have a bit of a different kind of open source community in the sense that it's not all kind of your technical folks that are usually involved with open source communities, right? Like it's not the typical environment. So when we started, we were all over the place in terms of project management. So we had code sitting in GitHub. We had lots of Google Docs that we had in terms of documentation that we would send people. We used Trello for project management and keeping track of tasks. We're all over the place in that sense. And when we started working with Red Hat, who were the Red Hat engineers that I mentioned, Olu and Steve, who were helping us move over to OpenShift, it kind of became the perfect opportunity for us to switch to GitLab in the sense that we wanted to, well, first of all, we wanted to use GitLab runners to do the OpenShift integration. I know there's different ways of doing it, but that was one way. The other bit of it was that the nice thing about GitLab, other than it just being an open source project and you can deploy it, I mean, that's just a whole other thing. But it does everything in one place for us, which is nice, right? So we have I know some of those features are also available in GitHub. It was just almost at that point a preference thing in terms of we got the wikis here, we can use issue boards to keep track of everything. And then all the CI/CD parts that come with GitLab, which were nice. So that was part of it. It was honestly just it wasn't because of how small of an organization we are, we don't do proper kind of, when picking a library, like, let's do an assessment of what's out there in the field, let's come up with criteria. And it's all like going back to the whole building the bicycle as we're riding it thing. It was we wanted to do it seem like a good way of doing everything in one place. So that was kind of the big decision and the reason for the move.
Yeah, I think like I've been involved, I don't know, maybe a month. I don't even know. It's been 60 days, the whole project. So I don't know when I first twigged to what you guys were doing and when somebody reached out for some help on doing this. But the other piece of the puzzle is that this group of folks weren't really savvy about open source practices, or you were savvy about open data and data privacy and all of those things. You had a lot of experience. Some of the data scientists and analysts were really up on all of that side of the coin, but creating a community around this and like the different approaches to project management and how to make things open, and one of like using GitLab or GitHub or anything and putting all of this out in the open was part of the learning curve too, I think. And GitLab gave us a very nice way to do that publicly and to start, writing the onboarding documentation as a group and collaborating on that and getting that up and running. So that was an interesting thing to watch, the phenomena of everybody piling on with, thumbs ups and here's a link to another data source and all of this, and like the coordination that had to get assembled and take place, and figuring out a way to make that all public and secure at the same time. So some of the pieces of the project, like Tableau, are not open source software and needed licenses and stuff. So there were a lot of pieces along that line, logistics-wise, that we had to figure out, as well as what Guillaume has done with some of the Red Hat team, getting it up and running in a scalable way.
Yeah, maybe Diane, to build on top of that, that was actually a really good point that I actually forgot to mention in the presentation. So we have a very small kind of technical team, and quite honestly, none of us had any experience with open source, like none, absolutely none. So that was another kind of, I mentioned Olu and Steve and obviously Guillaume, who helped us move some of the technical infrastructure and set it up on OpenShift. But the other really big part, like that was just brought up, is around the whole community aspect, right? Like that's what I think makes us different than just a website on the internet where it's just one guy doing some analysis. And we didn't know how to do that, honestly, right? Like we operated on Slack at first, and we ran into this issue as more people came on board, that the communication was getting very siloed, right? So a lot of conversations were happening in private chats between folks, and to catch someone up, like literally we would screenshot conversations with other people just so you don't have to rephrase it. It's just like, just read the conversation I just had with other person. Yeah. So we had a whole challenge that helped. That's another aspect that Red Hat helped us with. Diane was one of the leads, along with damn, the name I'm blanking on here. Diane.
Brian Prophet.
Right, Brian Prophet. Yes, and along with Brian Prophet, who kind of helped us figure out how do we even, like, open source 101. How do we do this? So that was another reason why we wanted to move to GitLab. So now it's, I guess we're still building on top of it, so it's kind of becoming more of a community thing. But like anyone can go right now on our GitLab, see all the issues, see all the discussions. Now it's not on private Slack channels. All the meetings, when it happens, that's all documented. There's wikis for things. Now, like how does an analysis go up on the website? Before it used to be, I talked to 3 other people and they knew how it happened. But if someone just is joining the community, they have no idea. But now we publicize that, so it's not a black box of decisions being made, and everyone gets transparency into it, which I think is part of what we're trying to do, which is another piece that Diane and Brian.
All right.
Sorry, another call. Which
that's okay.
Diane and Brian have been helping. I'm going to put my do not disturb on here. But,
so anyway. I think the other interesting thing was once we were digging into, was how experienced some of the clinicians, and basically they're clinician data scientists, and even your role, Farbod, is, you've you and Dr. Ben Fine and a whole bunch of other folks have this deep knowledge of the data and the data sources and how to do the analysis. And then there was, so there were sort of these data scientist doctors or engineers that were volunteering their time and how to take advantage of that. And then there are all these other people who I kind of coined a word, data scouts, people who were finding data sources and then, just posting them in Slack, which, has all kinds of issues and stuff. So if you could talk a little bit about how, like, you have all these disparate data sources, how you're aggregating them and bringing them together a little bit, and make that, talk a little bit about how you're combining all those data sources into decent analysis.
For sure. So how the website is structured, you'll see on the right-hand side of that GitLab there's 4 working groups, if you will. There is the website development group, so that's the kind of more technical folks. There is the data collection group, and that's or the data scouting group. That's what, some of whom Diana is referring to. And that group has honestly been amazing. So we've done a couple of different projects, and I'll talk about them. One is, there's 60-some medical students who are just volunteering their time, and other grad students, and quite literally just volunteers from the community who are collecting a brand new data set that does not exist around non-pharmaceutical intervention. So what I mean by that is, the government announces different policies in response to COVID. So border was shut down, schools were closed. There's no data source. Like, if you want to find out when these things happened, you would struggle. Like, you have to basically Google it and read news articles and put date time, right? So what they're doing is they're actively monitoring across the country when all these down to a regional level, right, like city A versus city B, these announcements are being made. And there's a whole kind of review process around it. And they built this whole group, right, just collecting this data set around non-pharmaceutical intervention. So that's been amazing. Maybe I'll speak a bit broadly outside of what we do just outside of the NPI, which is, one whole project. Like Diane alluded to, there is lots of data sources that are kind of non-traditional and traditional. So we have to come up with what I would say creative ways of dealing with this. So some is, I mentioned at the beginning, the government, for example, posts, they have one page where every day there's an HTML table that they update with new cases. So we have like web scrapers that go every day, like through cron jobs throughout different points of the day, and read off that table and capture it with a timestamp. There's other data sources that come to us in more creative ways. There's some reports that are PDF reports. So again, convert this PDF into actually a usable format that people can just get a timestamp, like a time trend and a proper kind of actionable, like almost an Excel CSV, right? Like a CSV file, and keeping historical trends of that. So there's been little mini pipelines built for each of these where this is our report PDF to database pipeline. This is our convert the government website to database pipeline. There's also a few other kind of open data groups that we leverage. There's this group called Canada Open Working Data Group, if I'm not butchering that name, led by Isha Berry, who's and a few other others out of U of T. And that's another data source, which we kind of use their CSV daily and update our databases. So there's basically lots of data pipelines sitting and running throughout the day now on OpenShift that just go scour the internet, if you will, from all these different sources and update the database, which in turn updates that Google Sheets workaround that I told everyone about, that then updates the visualizations, right? So if you go on our website, you'll see there's visualization on capacity, there is trends in cases, there is RT, right? So those are all coming from, those pipelines are populating the database. And then again, daily cron jobs run that update either the Google Sheets, which is our medium, or if it's Plotly, it's a direct kind of query from the database that runs an analysis and then updates it. So that's high level how everything works, and, how it's connected to the data.
Yeah, I think, and Guillaume and the team, they've done, and this is not just, this is me as a Canadian saying thank you to Guillaume and the other folks for setting that all up and making the automation happen to clean that data up and collect that data. It's been pretty amazing. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering,
If I may, Diane, I guess what Farbod explained is it's the perfect demonstration of the struggling that data scientists or researchers are facing with the data, and that's why I like this project, because what we help do is exactly what technology and open source can bring to the research world. Because we are, for us, it's pretty standard, to have cron jobs running into containers and connecting to the data, moving here and there. That's the kind of tools that researchers don't even know about. Okay, so here bringing these technology skill sets that we were able to do directly to this research is again the perfect demonstration on how I would say IT tools, the standard DevOps and practices and the technology that we've been using for the past few years have definitely their place in modern research, especially when it's so tied to data. So I guess we have a perfect example, and I'm pretty sure that in the coming months and years, we'll see more and more of those techniques applied directly in other research projects, because it helps a lot.
Yeah. So we're kind of learning from each other and hoping to move forward in the battle against COVID. It's pretty amazing. And a lot of the lessons that we're learning on, and that we've done, I think, in the Open DataHub.io project as well, sort of set us up nicely to be able to help Farbod and the team at HowsMyFlattening as well. So there's really, if any good outcome comes from COVID and all of the things here, is our ability to respond quickly using DevOps and using open source and using these models and the pre-existing stuff to help with pandemics and other emergencies like this. But it's also, what's been really interesting to me is there had been, prior to all the COVID stuff, a lot of conversations that I've had in the community with data scientists about how much, and data scientists, they love their Jupyter notebooks. They love that. They don't love dealing with the infrastructure. And so the more we can just enable them to have like Jupyter Hub and their notebooks and their pipelines all hooked up, the better. And the last thing we want them doing is, and I won't say wasting, but wasting their time, setting up CI/CD pipelines, deploying Kubernetes clusters and all of that. And so the more we can automate that and make that, I hate the word turnkey, but I'm going to use it, like just a solution that we can drop in and integrate in for whatever the training models, the training, the pipeline is for data, the better off we all will be. So I'm wondering.
And in fact, it's a little bit worse than that, because without things like Open Data Hub, they won't even, do themselves the CI/CDs and the pipelines. They will do everything manually. As Farbod described, at the beginning, just grabbing the Google Sheets and then transforming them manually and stuff like that. So it's not even going to a very integrated step. It's just even the first step in using modern tools that is a challenge for most people. So if we can bring them directly to I would say to the top with this kind of automated tooling, well, that's for the best, I guess.
Yeah, I think we saw that the same thing. There was another COVID project in Finland called FeverMap, fevermap.net, and there was, the good thing about it was came out of a hackathon, and it was most of it was developers, and they were applying it, and how quickly they were able to leverage the technology to move forward with their fever mapping project. So I think that's really one of the keys here, is where we, the technology folks who all want to contribute and move this forward and fight the battle against COVID, can actually contribute to this project. So if you're out there and listening and want to get involved, again, come back to the HowsMyFlattening.Ca GitLab page or their homepage, where there are links to that, and jump in. I wanted to ask Farbod as well, and Guillaume as too, where do you see this going after we, the life for this project, HowsMyFlattening, and the learnings going after this project? we're beyond this. So, you know, for the wider impact at the province, in the province of Ontario. And I'm over in, I'm in British Columbia over in BC. So a shout out to Dr. Bonnie Henry and keeping us safe out here in BC. So where do you think this is all going to, and this learnings that you've done, Farbod?
That's a good question, and I guess it kind of goes back to our mission, right? Like going back to what we want to do is we want to be able to show the value of transparent data, community-driven analytics, right? Be able to, you know, what we're really pushing for is to change the norm of how things are done. So going back to how things are done right now in healthcare analytics, it's very siloed. So there's different institutions that hold different data pieces, and it's extremely difficult to share data. Because every institution is responsible for their data, and if something goes wrong in terms of sharing the data, then it's on them, right? So that's the issue. So data sharing is quite hard in Ontario, and the people who have access to the data, you have to be, you have to jump through a ridiculous number of hoops to get access to very, very basic data. So it's not very open. And that's honestly what we're trying to change. That's part of our mission here. So you'll see, even that's part of what Open Data Hub is. I'm hoping will help us solve for. And let me talk about that a bit. So, like Guillaume mentioned, there is 3 buckets of access right now. There is the super secret bucket, the sensitive bucket, and then there's the public bucket, right? So by default, everyone has access to the public data, right? So I think we should be able to put any data that's not at all compromising patient information on that bucket. But then there is a sensitive bit. So for example, there may be contractual obligations or terms of use. And it's important that only certain people have access to it. But that doesn't mean that there should be a process set up for anyone to get access to it as long as they follow the terms of use, right? So that's, I guess, that's a transparency bit that we're pushing for, that getting access to healthcare data should not be there should not be a prerequisite to be a member of a private club to be a member of this to get access to healthcare data, right? I think that part of what we've been trying to show is a lot of our analysis on our site is done by what the term we like to call citizen scientists, right? So non-typical folks would you probably honestly not have access to the data otherwise. So I think that's a big thing we're trying to push for outside of COVID, outside of the pandemic bubble, if you will, outside of the lifetime of this project, is making data more accessible to folks, making it more transparent, and making it more open, community driven, so people can get access to these things, and you don't have to be a member of a specific club or a specific group to get access to it. How Open Data Hub is enabling that is because now we have this kind of secured access bit that we can use, then we can now put pipelines from the different buckets into each other, right? So there may be a data source that only a few people can get access to, but that doesn't mean aggregate data can't be accessed by more people, right? So now that we have this infrastructure, we can use Open Data Hub to give people access to aggregated data that no longer has those issues around privacy, around it, but it still makes the data transparent. It still makes it useful, because honestly, I think the thing that we're all trying to get to here is to get access to aggregated data. Kind of going back to the 80-20 bit, the thing that honestly makes a difference is usually aggregated data. We don't need patient-level information for 99% of the things, right? So that aggregated data is the challenge, right? And that's what we're hoping to solve for with the Open Data Hub.
Yeah. So I know I was in Slack the other day and having a conversation because with all the work going on around diversity and race and trying to track COVID based on, you know, ethnicity and diversity and all of that. One of the issues I think that was flagged for me was the lack of metadata. Even in the aggregated data, it was pretty lacking, at least from what I could see and what we were chatting about in the Slack around how did he put it? Is it the way that we figured out whether it was ethnic or not was by the location, and it was as if an entire city was one ethnicity, and was like, no, we need to break it down a little bit better. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement in also the cross mapping of different data sources. So when we have Stats Canada data on the population on that, and then we have the health, and there's a whole lot of work that still needs to be done in that space as well. So I think there's, we have a lot of work ahead of us. But what I think the thing that you guys have shown the light on is how these citizen scientists can help bring that to the front. What is very encouraging has been to see the Ontario province give thumbs ups and, you know, thank yous and respond positively, as opposed to like trying to shut you down or anything like that, to the work you're doing. And, you know, a lot of that, I think, a shout out to Dr. Ben Fine and his fine diplomacy skills and his influence with the different groups. He's done some amazing work getting us a little bit further in. So it's gonna be interesting to see how all of these learnings and the collaboration between all of these different parties, because there's U of T people, there's folks from at least a dozen other companies and partnerships that you guys have, you know, well beyond the Tableau and Plotly and GitLab stuff. There's, I don't know, like at least 10 or 20 different companies that are putting their resources and their time and effort into this project beyond the army of students who have been coming in. I have seen so many U of T, University of Toronto, if you're not Canadian, U of T folks on this, that it's just amazing to see. And, you know, hopefully this inspires a whole nother generation of people to collaborate in the open and also to help in efforts and initiatives like this. This is pretty huge, the stuff that you're doing, and it hasn't stopped yet. So it's, if you're out there, you're listening to this, or you're watching it later on, and you can see that Farbod, I think, is like a monster when it comes to this. You're always online all the time. Everything you can see on this page that's up here was last edited by Farbod a couple of hours or 20 hours ago, and there's tons of folks. Spencer has been doing the community project management for this. Marlies, there's you know, there's a lot of people who are helping to make this thing happen. So it's certainly not a party of one. And yeah, honestly, I think the next step is to onboard the Ontario government and collaborating on this too. I think that'll be the fun stuff. So, yeah. They're coming to the party, and you know, this is another adventure in open data too. So I think there's, as we go through this and we see that, you know, the screen scraping from government sites is one thing, but to actually have those data sources directly in the pipeline so you're not screen scraping would be awesome too.
Yeah, I think that's kind of goes to what Guillaume was saying around how technology that's almost more than standard, right? We're kind of introducing into this field that did not use it, right? So I feel like that will hopefully also enable parties that are sharing data with us to feel more comfortable. Like I briefly talked about the, you know, different tiered access and using aggregation pipelines to make data more public, right? There should be no reason why some form of almost all data can be public. It doesn't have to be, you know, row level. It doesn't even have to be amazing aggregates, but some form of it for everyone to have access to, because there will be, hopefully, as we're trying to show here, amazing analysis and insights generated because of the fact that citizen scientists can get access to it.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the lessons learned here is figuring out how to get the trust in the citizen scientists so that we enable the government to trust that, you know, we've got the right processes in place, we have the right security and privacy, and we're being compliant, we're not sharing data that we shouldn't, we're not accessing data that we shouldn't, we're ensuring everybody's privacy is respected, but also the power of the community to help find the anomalies, to help find the trends, to do the modeling. You know, we've always heard about like people looking out at data coming in from the universe and finding new stars and new planets and, you know, all kinds of interesting things there. But this is really pragmatic. This is affecting, and not that that space stuff isn't either, but this is really stuff that is life-changing and can really help figure out where we need to get more ICU seats and beds rather, new ventilators, where the curve is not flattening, where it's reoccurring. So the pieces here really are life-saving efforts, and to be able to bring to bear all of these resources is pretty amazing, and to do it in a way that everyone trusts the outcome. And I think that's the thing, is that doing it in the open helps, as we say in the open source, a little bit of sunlight goes a long way. It's kind of the sunlight on the open data is great, but also it's a bit of a two-way street. You have to make sure you're compliant, you're respecting privacy and all of that, and that's really, you guys have done a very amazing job working through all of that. And I think that in part is because so many of the clinicians who are on here, and I'm completely impressed by the roster. If someone goes to the website and sees who's weighing in on this, it's not there are a lot of students, but it's not a student-driven effort. So there's some pretty senior people in the Ontario health system working on this, and doctors and clinicians who really have been helpful and key to making sure that we do everything up on the up and up, and not break any rules or regulations.
100%. So maybe I'll briefly comment on that last bit. I think that's a credibility challenge that I hope we're also solving for, is because everything that we put on the site, whether it's a new data source or a new analysis, signed off on by experts in the field. Like, it's not some random person who's looking at this. It's all in the open, and you can see all the comments that get generated. But our leadership, you mentioned Dr. Ben Fine, who's a radiologist, who's a clinician, also engineering background, amazing guy. And then Dr. Laura Rosella and Dr. Ali Veda Atanoy, who have different backgrounds, who kind of bring the whole package, if you will. So Ben has that clinical background, Ali has the data science analytics background, and Laura has the epidemiology and scientific expertise, and that trio signs off on everything. So part of what we're trying to do is not be part of the hype, if you will. So we want our analysis to be actually scientifically sound. So that's why there is, on top of the open community bits, there is a rigorous process that we go through before anything gets added to the site. Because we do want to make sure that the science is there and it's not just hype on the internet.
That's perfect. So Guillaume, we're almost at the end of the hour. We're close to the end of the hour, or we're at the end of the hour. One of those things. Any last words about where you're thinking of, what you're thinking of doing next? What's on the roadmap next for Open Data Hub and HowsMyFlattening project? What's up next?
I guess next, what we will have a look into is maybe look at the Argo pipelines, because Farbod is doing Farbod and the team. They are doing a lot of things that are related to this realm of workflows and automated workflows and treatment of data and stuff like that. So I guess that's the next thing we will look into, just to see if it fits their needs. There's also the Kubeflow pipelines that we want to look into, trying to, again, automate a little bit more what's being done, going from notebook to fully automated data pipelines. That's what we'll look into in the coming weeks.
Cool. So with that, I'm just going to thank both of you very much for all of your efforts in this, and the entire HowsMyFlattening team, which is getting bigger every day, and hopefully we'll get a little more awareness out of doing this one and get a few more resources as well, and more eyeballs on the project, and continue to help the province of Ontario make their decisions based on good actual data, and in real time as close as possible. So thank you again for all of your efforts, Farbod, and Guillaume. Thank you for stepping up and taking this on. So really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Take care, guys.